Welcome to Noha's narrative where everything feels real and something hides deeper. The day the roses turned to ash, the morning of Selin Ayaz engagement celebration smelled like jasmine and warm bread. Our mother had hung white silk ribbons along the balcony of their modest home, and her sister Nora had spent 2 hours pinning every strand of Selin's dark hair into a soft, elegant knot. Everything was ready. The hall was booked. The guests were arriving. And Tariq was the man she had loved for 3 years was nowhere to be found. Selin stood by the entrance of the banquet hall in a blush pink dress, her phone pressed to her ear for the 4th time. No answer. She told herself he was stuck in traffic. She told herself his phone had died. She repeated every possible excuse in her mind until her sister placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Selin, you need to come inside. The expression on Nora's face was not one of comfort. It was the face people make when they already know the truth and do not know how to hand it over. Inside, their uncle sat at the head table with a document in front of him and a look of deep shame pulling at his face. Beside him stood 2 men in dark suits, whom Selin had never seen before, and seated across from them, calm and completely unbothered, was Tariq. He did not stand when she walked in. He did not smile. He simply looked at her the way a person looks at a chair they are about to sell. Tariq, her voice came out steadier than she felt. What is going on? He cleared his throat and folded his hands on the table. Sit down, Selin. I will not sit down. Tell me what this is. The older of the 2 men in suits slid the document across the table toward her. She looked at it without touching it at first. The way you look at something you sense will change your life the moment you pick it up. It was a contract. Her name was on it. Tariq's signature was already at the bottom. The terms were written in clean legal language, but the meaning was ugly and simple. Tariq had borrowed a significant sum of money from a man named Victor Hale 18 months ago. He had used Selin's name and her family property as collateral without her knowledge. He had never repaid a single payment, and now Victor Hale was calling the debt due. The debt due, not in money, but in the only thing Tariq had offered him. Selin herself bound to work in the Hale household for 2 years as a personal assistant and live under their roof. Selin read it twice, then she sat it down. You signed my name. Her voice was quick now, and somehow that was worse than shouting. You used my family's home. You sold me. Tariq finally looked slightly uncomfortable. It is only 2 years. Victor is a reasonable man. You will be well taken care of. I was your future wife. Plans change, he said it as though he were cancelling a dinner reservation. Nora grabbed Selin's arm before she could respond because the 2 men in suits were already moving toward the door and one of them had made clear the car outside was. Wait. Selin yanked her arm free, not from Nora but from the version of herself that wanted to collapse right there on the polished floor of that hall, surrounded by untouched celebration food and wilting flowers. She picked up her small bag from the table. She looked at Tariq one at final time. He glanced away first. Outside the car was black and running. One of Victor's men held the door open with the blank politeness of someone who did this regularly. Selin got in because she had no money, no plan, and her family's home was now at risk. She got in because something survival looks like walking into the exact thing that terrifies you. The car moved through the city. The jasmine and warm bread smell of the morning was gone. Through the window, she watched the streets. Her blood passed, ordinary and indifferent, full of people living days that had nothing to do with hers. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Miss Ayaz. I know what Tariq did. I may be able to help. Our dog Calder. She stared at the name Roman Calder. She had heard that name before. Everyone in this city had. He was the man Tariq despised above all the others. The rival who had beaten him in business twice and made no effort to hide dissatisfaction about it. She did not reply, but she did not delete the message either. She held the phone in both hands as the car carried her forward into a life she had never chosen. And somewhere beneath the fear, something small and stubborn refused to go quit. The devil, with a gentle voice, the Hale estate sat behind tall iron gates at the edge of the city, where old money had built walls high enough to keep the rest of the world from looking in. Selin arrived in the evening when the sky was turning a deep bruised purple and the garden lights were just beginning to flicker on along the stone pathway. Victor Hale met her in the entrance hall. He was a tall man in his 60s, with silver hair and kind of posture that came from decades of believing every room belonged to him. He looked at Selin the way a collector looks at a new acquisition, not with cruelty exactly, but with complete ownership. "You're punctual," he said. "Good, I value punctuality." He handed her over to a housekeeper named Mistress Fan, a thin woman with sharp eyes who showed Selin to a small room on the third floor. It was clean and plainly furnished. A single window looked out over the back garden. "Breakfast is at 7, Mistress Fan said. Miss Cassie takes her coffee at night at 8. You will bring it?" "I'm not a maid," Selin said quickly. Mistress Fan looked at her with something close to sympathy. "Read your contract again, dear." She left Selin alone in the room. Selin sat on the edge of the narrow bed and looked at her hands for a long time. Then she took out her phone and opened the message from Roman Calder again. She read it 4 times. On the 5th, she typed a reply. "What kind of help?" The response came in under a minute, as though he had been waiting. "The kind that cost Tariq was everything he has left. Meet me tomorrow. I will send the address." Selin set the phone face down on the mattress and lay back and stared at the ceiling. She did not sleep well, but she did sleep. It surprised her because it meant something in her body still believed tomorrow was worth waking up for. In the morning, Cassie Hale made her presence known before Selin had even reached the kitchen. She was 24, blunt and dressed in the kind of casual clothes that cost more than most people's monthly salary. She leaned against the kitchen door frame with her arms folded and looked Selin up and down with open interest. "So you are the girl Tariq handed over?" She said it without cruelty, which almost made it worse. It was simply a fact to her, the way weather was a fact. He must have been truly desperate. Selin placed the coffee cup on the silver tray without looking up. "Your coffee takes 2 sugars and oatmeal, according to Mistress Fan." Cassie tilted her hand. "You are not going to cry or yell at me?" "No, most people in your position would." Selin finally looked at her. "And not most people." Something shifted in class expression. Not warmth exactly, but a flicker of recalibration. The way someone adjusts when they realize the person in front of them is not when they expect it. She took the coffee without another word. The address, Roman sent led Selin to a quiet building in the business district, a glass tower with no flashy signage. She was left in immediately at the front desk, as though her name had been added to a list before she ever confirmed she was coming. The elevator opened directly into a private office on the 22nd floor. The space was large and ordered, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and bookshelves that had clearly been raised rather than decorated. Behind the desk sat Roman Calder. He was younger than she had imagined, 32, maybe 33, dark-haired, lean, with a kind of composed face that gave away very little. He stood when she entered, which she had not expected, and gestured to the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming, Miss Ayaz." "I almost did not," she said honestly, sitting down. "I know." He sat as well and folded his hands on the desk. "You do not trust me. That is reasonable. You do not know me. I know you are Tariq's rival. I am, he said it without pride or apologize. Which means I know exactly how Tariq operates, how he borrows, how he lies, and what documents he has signed that he should not have. I also know that the contract binding you to Victor Hale has 3 legal errors that would make it unconsiderable or unenforceable in court. Selin went very still. You are serious? I do not make a habit of wasting my own time on other people's. He opened a folder on his desk and turned it toward her. There is a clause missing from the consent section. The property listed as collateral was never properly appraised or registered under your name, which means it cannot legally be used as collateral at all. And the signature line was signed under duress, which a decent liar can argue in front of any judge. Selin looked at the document. She understood enough to see he was telling the truth. Then take it to court, she said. Free me from it. I will, he paused, but I need something in return. She looked up at him sharply. Not what you are thinking, he said, and his voice was calm and unbothered. I need a partner. Someone to attend 3 business events with me over the next 6 weeks. Tariq has been spreading a particular story about me to damage a deal I am trying to close. The story involves my personal life. A partner at these events would contradict it simply by being present. Selin studied his face. He did not look away. You are asking me to pretend, she said. I'm asking you to attend dinners and to be yourself, he replied. You do not need to pretend anything. You are clearly capable of holding a room. She thought about the narrow bed on the 3rd floor of the Hale estate. She thought about Tariq sitting at that table, holding his hands, looking at her like a chair. If the contract is broken, she said, I need my family's home protected as well. Already included, he turned another page in the folder. Her family's property clearly listed, with a separate legal protection clause already drafted. She sat with that for a moment. You prepared all of this before I replied to your message, she said. Yes, that is either very confident or very presumptuous. For the first time, something moved at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, but close. I prefer through. Selin looked out at the city below the window at all those ordinary streets full of people living days that had nothing to do with hers. Then she looked back at Roman Calder. This man she did not know, this rival of the person who had just sold her away like a debt. All right, she said, we have a deal. He extended his hands across the desk. She shook it. His grip was steady, so was hers. The woman he never expected to love. The first event was a charity dinner held at the rooftop of the city's most prestigious hotel 3 weeks after Selin had shaken Roman Calder's hand across that desk. In those 3 weeks, several things had changed. The legal team Roman hired had already filled the initial challenge against Victor Hale's contract. Victor had gone quit, which his own lawyers told Selin was actually a good sign. And Cassie Hale, strangely, had begun leaving small things outside. Selin's room door, a novel one evening, a warm pastry the next morning. No note, no explanation. Selin had not moved back home yet. Her lawyer, a sharp woman, Roman, and had appointed, named Petra Sung, advised her to remain patient and visible, to not disappear from the situation before it was fully resolved. So Selin stayed in the small room with a single window and looked out at the garden each night and thought about what her life was becoming. She thought about it less with fear now than with a strange, quick curiosity. Roman sent a car for her the evening of the charity dinner. She wore a deep green dress that Nora had brought over along with a look that said everything without saying anything at all. Selin had simply hugged her sister and told her to trust the process, which was something she was still learning to tell herself. When she arrived at the rooftop, Roman was already there, speaking to a group of older men in suits. He saw her the moment she stopped out of the elevator. He excused himself from the group without rushing and walked toward her with the same composed steadiness she had come to recognize as simply the way he moved through the world. You look well, he said. You sound surprised, she replied. Not surprised, just nothing it. He offered him arm and she took it and they moved into the room together the way two people move when they have quickly agreed to trust each other. At least for the evening. Tariq was there. She had not expected that, though perhaps she should have. He stood near the bar with glass in his hand and the expression of a man who had been comfortable until the moment he was not. His eyes found Selin and then moved to Roman beside her, and something ugly passed across his face before he arranged it back into neutrality. Selin kept her chin level. She did not look away first. Roman leaned slightly toward her and said very quickly, "You do not have to acknowledge him." "I know," she said. "I'm not doing it for him, I'm doing it for me." Roman said nothing to that, but she left. But she felt the small shift in his posture beside her. Something that might have been respect settling into his frame. The evening moved the way those evenings do, with polite conversation and practiced laughter and food that was beautiful to look at, the modest in portion. Selin spoke easily to the people Roman introduced her to. She was genuine with them, curious, warm, and she could tell it caught some of them off guard, because they had expected someone decorative and found someone pleasant instead. At one point, a woman named Gloria Fenn, no relation to the housekeeper, a sharp and well-connected investor whom Roman had been trying to bring into his current deal, pulled Selin aside near the window. "How long have you known Roman?" Gloria asked, swirling her glass. "Long enough," Selin said. Gloria smiled at that. "He is a difficult man to know. Closed up tight as a wallet. But he looks at you differently than he looks at everything else." Selin glanced across the room to where Roman stood too, listening to someone speak, and at precisely that moment he looked up and found her eyes across the distance with no effort at all. "The way you find something you have already memorized." She looked back at Gloria. "He's a good man," she said, and was quickly startled to realize she meant it. On the ride back, they sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. The city moved past the windows in streams of light and shadow. "Gloria is going to sign," Roman said eventually. "I know," Selin said. "She told me." He turned to look at her. "She told you?" "We walked for a while. She likes directness." "I was direct with her." Selin looked at her hands in her lap. "I told her about the contract with Victor Hill. Not all of it, just that I had been in a situation recently where someone else made decisions about my life without asking me. And that working with people who valued honestly and changed things for me." Roman was quiet for a moment. She told her that it was true, and she appreciated it. Selin paused. She said, "Any man who surrounds himself with honest people is worth investing in." Roman looked out the window. The lights of the city moved across his face in slow, soft intervals. "That was not part of our arrangements," he said, but his voice had none of its usual careful neutrality. "It was something warmer and less guarded." "No," Selin agreed, "it was not." Another silence settled between them. This one felt different from the ones before it, fuller somehow, like a room where someone has just said the true thing out loud and the air is still adjusting to it. "The contract challenge goes to airing next week," Roman said. "Petra told me you will win." "We will win," she corrected gently. He looked at her again. The city lights were still moving. His expression was not composed in the usual way. It was open, just slightly, just enough, like a door that has been pulled on an inch from its frame by someone who finally decided to try the handle. "Selin," he said, and the way he said her name with care and weight, like it was something he had been hoarding carefully for a while, made her breath catch in a way she had not felt in a long time. "Roman," she said back, equally quick, equally honest. Neither of them said anything more. They did not need to. Outside, the city carried on being indifferent and bright and full of people living their own ordinary lives. But inside that car, something had shifted, irreversible. The way seasons shifted, not in a single dramatic moment, but in a quick, inevitable turning that you only recognize once it has already happened. 3 days later, the court ruled the contract with Victor Hill void on all three grounds Petra had identified. Victor did not appeal. Tariq, stripped of his last financial shield, lost the investment deal he had been trying to close. Roman had not arranged that outcome deliberately, but he did not mourn it either. Selin moved back into her family's home. Her mother cried. Nora made tea and pretended not to cry. Jasmine, her mother had planted along the front wall, was blooming again. That evening, Roman came to the door himself. No driver, no assistant, just him standing on the front step with no particular excuse appeared, which for a man like Roman Calder was the most honest thing he had ever done. Selin opened the door and looked at him. I was in the area, he said. She raised one eyebrow. You live on the other side of the city? Yes, he said simply. She stepped aside and let him in. Her mother appeared from the kitchen, took one look at Roman and immediately began making more tea. Nora appeared from the hallway, took one look at Selin's face and smiled in a way that said she had already understood everything before anyone had said a word. Life, Selin thought, was strange and painful and capable of turning himself completely around when you least expected it. Tariq had sold her away like a debt and in doing so had handed her, entirely by accident, the one thing she had never thought to look for. She sat beside Roman at her mother's table and passed him a cup of tea and felt for the first time in a very long time that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Thank you.